The fluorescent lights in Core Dynamics' design wing always hummed too loud, casting that sickly pallor over everything that made even the most vibrant concepts look jaundiced. I'd grown used to it over 3 years, the way you grow used to a low-grade fever or the taste of disappointment. The 42nd floor housed our creative department, suspended between the executive suites above and the account management circus below, a perfect metaphor for our place in the corporate food chain. But that Tuesday morning, standing beside my workstation while Aaron Blackwood, our lead designer with his perfectly pressed shirts, Italian leather shoes, and that condescending smirk, delivered his verdict, the buzzing felt like wasps in my skull. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows caught the dust motes dancing around us, and I watched them settle on my computer screen like ash after a fire. "Your style's too outdated, Leona. Also, you pissed off the CEO for some reason," he shrugged, not even bothering to meet my eyes. His fingers drummed against my desk, where I'd eaten countless lunches, spilled coffee during all-nighters, and built campaigns that had won 3 industry awards, where the Crystalline Industries account files lay spread like organs during an autopsy. I'd spent 6 months on Crystalline's complete rebrand. 6 months of late nights that left me squinting at red lights on the drive home, weekend calls with their demanding but visionary leadership team, and presentations that made the board lean forward in their chairs like wolves scenting prey. The client loved my vision, bold, geometric patterns that spoke to their tech innovation while maintaining the elegance their pharmaceutical division required. The preliminary numbers were stellar. Focus groups scored at 94% for brand recognition, 89% for trust indicators. But apparently, CEO Thomas Hartwell had other plans. Aaron's cologne, something expensive and cloying that probably cost more than my monthly Metro card, lingered in the air as he walked away. I noticed how his shoulders relaxed once he'd delivered the blow, like a man who'd just signed a death warrant and felt lighter for it. The cruelty wasn't personal, it was procedural. That made it worse somehow. I walked away in silence, feeling 30 pairs of eyes tracking my movement through the open office. The carpet, industrial gray with flecks of blue that were supposed to evoke creativity but mostly just had stains, muffled my steps, but I could hear the whisper starting before I even reached the elevator. In corporate environments like Core Dynamics, reputation dies faster than flowers in winter, and mine was already wilting in real time. Stacy from Accounts Receivable gave me a sympathetic smile as I passed her desk. Robert from Digital Marketing suddenly found his screen fascinating. Even Janice, the department secretary who'd been here since the Clinton administration and had seen more corporate bloodbaths than a war correspondent, couldn't meet my eyes. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft percussion of keyboards and the distant hum of the espresso machine that had been broken for 3 weeks. The thing about being discarded is that people assume you disappear completely. They forget you still have access cards that beep green at security checkpoints, still receive company-wide emails with their passive-aggressive subject lines, still know where the bodies are buried in shared drives and forgotten file folders. Aaron moved my junior designer, Zoe Phillips, onto the Crystalline project within hours, so fast it felt orchestrated, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Zoe was 26, fresh from Parsons, with that hungry look of someone who'd grown up middle class and refused to go back. Smart girl, talented with typography, eager to please, terrified of making waves in her first corporate job. Perfect for what Aaron had in mind. I'd mentored her for 8 months, watched her confidence grow, celebrated when she landed her first solo client presentation. Now she was collateral damage in someone else's game. I watched from my new exile in the archive room, a glorified closet on the 39th floor they'd reassigned me to while restructuring my role. The official explanation was that they needed someone to optimize our historical asset management, which was corporate speak for punishment duty. The room smelled like old paper and industrial disinfectant, with a single window that looked out onto the ventilation system of the building next door. But it had one advantage: the glass partition gave me a perfect view of the design floor above through the building's atrium. Through that glass, I could see Aaron hovering over Zoe's shoulder, his hand lingering too long on her back as he pointed at her screen. The way she stiffened, then forced herself to relax, told me everything I needed to know about his management style. I'd been lucky. As a senior designer, I'd had enough clout to deflect his advances. Zoe didn't have that luxury. The drafts they were producing looked like corporate vomit, safe, sterile, forgettable templates that could have been generated by AI. Everything Crystalline's dynamic CEO, Isabella Romano, had explicitly said she didn't want during our 3-hour strategy session back in January. She'd leaned across the conference table in their midtown headquarters, her silver hair catching the light like steel, and said, "I want something that makes our competitors weep with envy. We're not here to blend in." But Erin was giving her exactly what she'd rejected: neutral colors, generic fonts, layouts that whispered instead of roared. I could see Zoe's frustration in the way she hunched over her keyboard, making revision after revision that only made the concepts more bland. She kept glancing toward the archive room, and once our eyes met through the glass, she looked away quickly, but not before I saw the desperation there. The real revelation came during my third week in exile. I was cataloging old campaign materials, another mind-numbing task designed to break my spirit, when I noticed patterns in Core Dynamics client relationships. Projects that had been killed or redirected at the last minute. Clients who'd left abruptly after their companies had faced sudden financial difficulties. Acquisition announcements that followed suspiciously close to failed rebrands. Late-night visits from Hartwell to Erin's office became routine. I started tracking them: Tuesday at 7:30 p.m., Thursday at 8:15 p.m., the following Monday at 7:45 p.m. Hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when anyone approached the glass conference rooms. Email threads I wasn't copied on, discussing strategic realignments and market positioning optimization. The paranoia wasn't paranoia when the evidence was this thick. I started building a timeline, cross-referencing client departures with acquisition announcements in industry publications. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Core Dynamics wasn't just failing clients, they were deliberately sabotaging them. I started cataloging everything with the methodical precision of an archivist building a case for posterity. Screenshots of the original creative briefs with their timestamps intact. Recordings of client calls from when I still had access to the conference bridge system. Comments from Romano about what she wanted versus what she was receiving, saved in my personal cloud storage. My phone became a digital vault of discrepancies, backed up to 3 different servers because I'd learned that evidence has a way of disappearing in corporate investigations. The breakthrough in understanding their methodology came from an unlikely source: Gregory Hutchins, the janitor who'd been cleaning Core Dynamics offices for 7 years. Gregory was invisible to the executives, which made him the perfect observer. During one of our brief conversations by the elevator, he mentioned how often Hartwell worked late in the legal department. "Strange thing," Gregory said, mopping the marble floor with practiced efficiency, "is he's always there right before we lose big clients. Happened with Paramount Tech, happened with Stellar Pharmaceuticals. Lawyers working overtime, then suddenly those companies can't pay their bills." The breakthrough came on a Thursday evening when the October rain was hammering against the windows like bullets. I was working late in the archive room, or pretending to, while actually monitoring the activities 3 floors up through the building's internal security feed that I'd accessed using my old admin credentials. Erin had forgotten to revoke them, probably assuming I was too beaten down to cause trouble. I heard Hartwell's voice echoing from Erin's office through the ventilation system that connected our floors. The walls in Core Dynamics were thinner than the egos they contained, and sound traveled in unexpected ways through the building's dated infrastructure. "Told you to keep it bland. Romano's company is hemorrhaging money after that FDA rejection last quarter, and when they can't pay our fees, we'll recommend our acquisition partners. Clean, simple, profitable." Erin's laugh was like chalk on glass, sharp and grating. Leona's designs would have made them look too strong, too viable. Can't have that when we're positioning them for a hostile takeover. Her concepts would have boosted their market confidence by 20% easy. My blood turned to ice water. The FDA rejection Erin mentioned, that was confidential information Romano had shared during our strategy sessions, trusting that Core Dynamics would help them rebuild their image after the regulatory setback. Instead, they were using that vulnerability as a weapon. The pieces clicked into place with the precision of a rifle bolt. This wasn't about my outdated style or pissing off the CEO. This was about deliberately sabotaging a client for financial gain, using their trust and their confidential information as ammunition. My removal wasn't corporate politics, it was damage control. They needed someone compliant, someone who wouldn't recognize what they were doing. I pulled out my phone and started recording, not the conversation, that ship had already sailed, and recording executives without consent would be illegal, but my own testimony. Every detail, every inconsistency, every breadcrumb that led back to their scheme. If they wanted to play with client trust and my reputation, they'd learn why I'd survived 3 years in this corporate snake pit despite being a woman in a male-dominated field. The real weapon wasn't going to be accusations or confrontations. Those could be deflected, spun, buried in legal proceedings that would drag on for years. The weapon was going to be Romano herself. I still had her direct email from the initial client meetings, still had her personal cell phone number from the late-night strategy calls. Professional correspondence, completely legitimate. But I needed more than just my word against theirs. That's when I remembered the backup drives in the IT department, the automatic server backups that captured every email, every shared document, every digital footprint for legal compliance. Aaron might have removed me from current projects, but my historical access meant I could still retrieve old communications. Working through the weekend, I compiled a comprehensive dossier, email chains showing Romano's enthusiasm for my original concepts, timestamps proving when the creative direction changed, financial projections that demonstrated how my designs would have strengthened Crystalline's market position. Most damning of all, I found Aaron's emails to Hartwell discussing creative solutions to client overconfidence. My email to Romano was surgical in its precision, crafted with the same attention to detail I'd put into her original brand strategy. Ms. Romano, I wanted to follow up on some concerns regarding the current creative direction for your rebrand. As the original designer on your account, I've noticed significant departures from your stated vision and strategic objectives. The current concepts appear to ignore key elements we discussed regarding market positioning and competitive differentiation. Would you be interested in seeing the initial concepts we developed together, alongside the current proposals? I believe the comparison might be illuminating for your team's evaluation process. Her response came within an hour, marked urgent. Ms. Davis, please call me immediately. I'm in meetings until 4 p.m., but this takes priority. The conversation that followed was 27 minutes of Romano's voice growing progressively colder as I walked her through the timeline with forensic precision. Her company's financial situation, which she'd disclosed in confidence during our early meetings, trusting that Core Dynamics would help them rebuild their image after the FDA regulatory setback, versus the bland, uninspiring concepts Aaron was pushing that would make them look weak and vulnerable. The designs they're showing us now, Romano said, her voice tight with controlled fury, they're exactly what I told you I didn't want. Generic, forgettable, something that screams struggling company desperate for approval. I specifically said we needed to project strength and innovation. I explained the sudden shift in creative direction after Hartwell's direct involvement, the way my removal coincided perfectly with the project's creative neutering, the pattern of other clients who'd faced similar situations before being acquired by companies with mysterious connections to Core Dynamics board members. Send me everything, Romano said finally, and I could hear her switching into the voice she probably used when negotiating with pharmaceutical distributors. I want to see every concept, every email, every piece of correspondence. I want timelines, I want documentation, I want a complete picture of what happened to this project. Within 6 hours, my entire digital archive was in Romano's hands via encrypted file transfer. Within 12 hours, she'd shared it with her legal team, Morrison, Kessler and Associates, one of the city's most aggressive corporate litigation firms. By the end of the week, Core Dynamics senior partners were fielding pointed questions about client sabotage, breach of fiduciary duty, and something the lawyers called conspiracy to defraud through creative malpractice. The beauty of corporate scandals is how quickly they metastasize once they breach containment. Romano wasn't just any client, she was connected to half the city's pharmaceutical and tech elite through her board positions and industry associations. Word spread through the professional network like blood and water, and sharks began circling. By Monday, I was getting calls from journalists at Adage and Campaign magazine. By Wednesday, 3 other Core Dynamics clients had requested emergency creative reviews of their ongoing projects. Paramount Tech, one of the companies Gregory had mentioned, retained Morrison, Kessler and Associates to investigate their failed rebrand from 2 years ago. The senior partners called an emergency meeting. I watched through the archive room's glass partition as men in expensive suits filed into the top-floor conference room like pallbearers at a funeral. Hartwell's assistant, a nervous woman named Patricia who'd worked for the company for 15 years, kept shuttling documents back and forth with the expression of someone watching her pension evaporate. Aaron started making mistakes, the kind that happen when pressure builds beyond breaking points. He snapped at Zoe during a team meeting, loud enough that people 3 cubicles away turned to stare. He missed 2 client calls, forgot to file project reports, left confidential documents scattered on his desk. The carefully constructed facade of competent leadership was crumbling like old paint. 8 days after Aaron had dismissed me with his casual cruelty, he burst into the archive room where I was quietly organizing old client files and building my case with methodical precision. His face was flushed, his usually perfect hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, and his voice carried the particular pitch of a man watching his career implode in real time while understanding exactly how he'd lit the fuse. "Why did the client reject all our drafts?" he yelled, as if I held the answer to his professional apocalypse. I looked up from my filing cabinet with the kind of calm that comes from watching justice serve itself. Maybe because they wanted something that didn't insult their intelligence. The rejection letter from Crystalline Industries had been comprehensive and brutal, crafted by lawyers who specialized in corporate warfare. Not only were they terminating their contract with Core Dynamics and demanding a full refund of fees paid to date, but they were threatening legal action for what Romano's attorneys termed deliberate creative sabotage with intent to financially compromise the client through professional malpractice. The letter detailed everything: the departure from agreed-upon creative strategy, the timeline showing deliberate degradation of concepts, the pattern of creative decisions that would have weakened Crystalline's market position during a vulnerable period. Romano's legal team had done their homework, cross-referencing my documentation with their own records to build an airtight case. Hartwell had thrown Aaron under the bus within hours of the legal threat arriving via certified mail. Suddenly, Aaron was a rogue employee acting without proper authorization. The surveillance footage of their late-night meetings? Disciplinary discussions about performance issues and creative differences. The recorded calls about keeping designs bland? Taken out of context by a disgruntled former employee. But the damage was done, spreading through the industry like wildfire through dry timber. Romano had already shared her experience with 3 other CEOs, 2 of whom were Core Dynamics clients and 1 of whom sat on the board of the American Marketing Association. The senior partners were scrambling to contain the hemorrhaging, bringing in crisis management consultants and setting up legal defense funds. Aaron had become toxic waste in a suit, professionally radioactive in a way that would follow him across the industry. LinkedIn connections started disappearing. Conference invitations were quietly rescinded. Headhunters stopped returning his calls. The most satisfying part wasn't his fall, it was watching the system correct itself. Zoe got reassigned to work directly with senior partners on high-profile accounts, her talent finally recognized now that Aaron's interference was removed. 3 junior designers who'd been overlooked for promotions suddenly found themselves leading projects and getting the recognition they deserved. Gregory, the janitor who'd provided that crucial insight, got a commendation and a raise after I mentioned his observational skills to the senior partners during my exit interview. Sometimes justice trickles down in unexpected ways. I cleaned out my desk the following Monday, not because I was fired, but because Crystalline Industries had offered me a position as their director of business strategy, with a salary that was 40% higher than what Core Dynamics had paid me and equity options that could be worth millions if their pipeline of pharmaceutical innovations paid off. Romano had smiled when she made the offer during our meeting in her corner office overlooking Central Park. "I prefer working with people who understand the difference between collaboration and conspiracy. Plus, you've already proven you can protect client interests even when it costs you personally." Aaron was gone by Tuesday morning, his departure so abrupt that his coffee mug was still sitting on his desk when security came to collect his belongings. No farewell email, no transition period, no opportunity to spin his exit as a career advancement. Just an empty office and a company-wide message about pursuing new opportunities in an evolving market. Hartwell survived, men like him always do, insulated by board connections and golden parachutes, but his sphere of influence had shrunk considerably. 3 board members called for his resignation, and the acquisition consulting firm that had been their preferred partner for client companies quietly ended their relationship with Core Dynamics. The archive room where they'd tried to bury me became a conference room named the Leona Davis Creative Strategy Center after the senior partners decided they needed some positive publicity. Someone hung motivational posters on the walls, corporate inspiration meant to cleanse the space of its history, but I know what really happened in that cramped, fluorescent purgatory. I learned that silence isn't surrender, it's reconnaissance. The lesson isn't about revenge, though revenge can be a delicious side effect when justice is properly served. It's about documentation, about building cases with the methodical precision of a prosecutor who knows that truth has weight when it's properly assembled. In a world where handshakes mean nothing and contracts are suggestions, the person with the most complete record of the truth usually gets to decide what justice looks like. Sometimes the system corrects itself. You just have to know where to apply the pressure, how long to wait for the structure to show its stress fractures, and when to step back and let gravity do its work. The industry is smaller than people think, and reputations travel faster than gossip. 6 months later, I heard through professional networks that Aaron was working for a small agency in Phoenix, designing car dealership flyers and dental practice brochures. Not exactly the creative leadership trajectory he'd envisioned, but perfectly suited to someone whose greatest talent was making visionary concepts look ordinary. As for me, I'm building something better at Crystalline Industries, something that proves creativity and integrity aren't mutually exclusive. Every campaign we launch, every brand we elevate, every client who trusts us with their vision, it's all evidence that there's another way to do business. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting ahead.